Hello, and thanks for joining us again today as we continue our study in the book of the Song of Solomon. We've been taking a rather literal approach to the unfolding of this poetic piece written by King Solomon so that we might learn the lessons that he can show to us about the importance of a true and abiding love. We're using Homer Haley's outline to divide the various speakers in this production so that we might understand the lessons and the context in which it is being delivered. As we begin looking at the opening of the book, we find love is first introduced to us, and we see a love triangle that forms. We have a Shulamite maiden who is in love with her beloved shepherd boy. And as we review over the dreams and the thoughts and the moments that she recalls about her relationship with him, we are introduced to some of the key components that makes an abiding love. She has an attraction to this shepherd boy, to his simple style of living, to his handsomeness, to the various things about him that are very appealing to her, and from that attraction grows an affection. The idea of wanting to be with her beloved, to share good times with her beloved, and to be in his presence. She is able, as we've gone through the opening chapters of the book so far, reminisce about many wonderful moments that they have shared together. She is from that able to put together in her mind some dreams and some moments in which she wishes that these would be the things they could still do, or that here would be another expression of love that her beloved might bestow upon her. And so she has all of these wonderful memories and all of these wonderful thoughts about this beloved shepherd boy that she cares so much about. But as we also look at the unfolding of these opening chapters, King Solomon has observed this woman and is absolutely fascinated by her beauty. He has seen that she's an outdoorsy woman. She talks about her being very darkened by the sun, that she's very highly tanned. She's had basically a bit of a rough life. But to Solomon, he just sees a gorgeous woman that he would like to have as yet another wife in his harem. And there are many things about her that are fascinating to him. And so in his initial conversations with her, while they are still at the tents in Issachar, he talks about how beautiful he sees her. He makes promises as to what he could provide for her. The beautiful outfits and dresses that he could outfit her with, the ornaments of precious gold that he could give to her, the kind of house of cedar and fir that he could build for her. And so he makes many promises of what could be a better life to come if she would in turn fall in love with him and forget about the beloved. If she would simply decide that he was the one that she should want. So as we moved on through then the writing of Solomon here, we've gone through the first two parts of this poetic drama, so to speak, kind of like a play that's unfolding. And last time we looked at what I called Act 2 of this particular drama, in which they now change locations. Instead of staying at the tents of Issachar and being out there in the countryside, they have now made the move back into Jerusalem. And in chapter 3, we found people being recorded here as they made comments about Solomon as he comes back into town. And they talk about the pageantry of the parade as he comes into town. And look at that beautiful woman that's up there beside of him. And look at the soldiers that are marching there behind him. And look at the various pieces of accessory, his bed and other things that are following along. It's like giving a report about the floats and bands and the activities of a parade and how they are so thrilled with Solomon, how they love him, how they appreciate all that he has done. And so we see here him having a lot of respect. And of course, the inference to this is that the little lowly Shulamite woman can't help but see her being now the object of everybody's affection, that she is gaining great acceptance by the general population, as we would think them applauding her as she comes into town, They hear Solomon is showing her all of this affection. Her life could be wonderful if she would cash in the memories of the countryside and buy into this new city life, living at the palace and being an honored wife of the king. But as they have now arrived in Jerusalem, we see her love now truly being tested. And this is the second major theme that begins to develop in the book. We've talked about the beginnings of love, what true love is, certain things that nurture that true love. But then can love continue on and abide? Is it going to be able to prevail over other influences that may come along to say, why don't you change your affections, change your life, and come this new direction? So here, as we look at chapter 4 beginning today, we are going to see what happens now that they have returned to the royal palace in Jerusalem. And we see Solomon once again having an audience with the Shulamite woman and trying to woo her into falling in love with him. Here in the 4th chapter, beginning in verse 1, Solomon says, "Behold, thou art fair, my love. Behold, thou art fair. Thou hast dove's eyes within thy locks. Thy hair is as a flock of goats that appear from Mount Gilead." Your hair is flowing and beautiful. It's just like watching a trail of goats as they would come down the mountainside, all kind of following in line. It's a smooth flow. He says, "Thy teeth are like the flock of sheep that are even shorn, which came up from the washing, whereof every one beareth twins, and none is barren among them." Here we find your smile is so beautiful. Your teeth are pearly white, and you don't have a snaggletooth look. Everything is perfectly mashed. You are just gorgeous to look upon. Thy lips are like a thread of scarlet, and thy speech is comely. Thy temples are like a piece of pomegranate within thy locks. He likes the shape of her face. He loves to hear her talk. Maybe it's the country accent that she has, but there is something about her every aspect that just fascinates Solomon. The simplicity of her life, the simple beauty of this woman, the natural appeal that she possesses. In verse 4, "Thy neck is like the tower of David, builded for an armory, whereon there hangeth 1,000 bucklers, all shields of mighty men." As he talks about her looks here, he is not in any way being disparaging. He is not in any way putting off on her beauty. He is talking about how stout and strong and what poise she has, and the erect way in which she carries herself. Her carriage is of a royal nature, so to speak. The Common English Standard says, "Like David's tower is your neck, splendidly built. 1,000 shields are hung upon it, all the weapons of warriors." In other words, with the jewels that she may have been wearing, the gold at the time, the erect stature and poise that she has, everything about her makes her appealing to the king. He says, "Thy two breasts are like two young roes that are twins, which feed among the lilies." So he says, even your bust line, everything about you is perfectly proportioned. You are absolutely gorgeous to look upon. And so Solomon here is kind of working overtime, shall we say, to appeal to her gorgeous disposition and appearance, and to let her know that he just can't take his eyes off of her. All of these things are a powerful force to a woman, to have this sort of appeal be shown to her by another man. And so in verse 6, we find here the Shulamite kind of betraying what's rolling around in the back of her mind. She says, "Until the day break and the shadows flee away, I will get me to the mountains of myrrh and to the hill of frankincense." In other words, Solomon's talking about her beauty, and that's all well and good, and she appreciates the flattering things, but she's looking for an exit. She can't wait to get back to the hill country. The palace and Jerusalem are strange to her. This is not her native background. And so she kind of feels a little bit out of place and would love to be in a more comfortable surrounding. We find in verse 7, Once again, comment is made by Solomon, just in summing everything up. He says, "Thou art all fair, my love. There is no spot in thee." So while he's talking about her being the absolute epitome of perfection, she's looking at him and smiling, and in the back of her mind saying, "Boy, I wish I was somewhere else." Well, then her mind goes to comments from her shepherd boy, memories that she may have had of things that he has said in the past. She kind of dreams of him being like the knight in shining armor that's able to come and to rescue her from this uncomfortable situation in which she finds herself. Continuing on in verse 8, she says, "Come with me from Lebanon, my spouse, with me from Lebanon. Look from the top of Anamnan, from the top of Shinar, from Hermon, from the lions' dens, from the mountains of the leopards." Now the shepherd is talking. This is what she is wishing that he would be able to say to her. The Amplified Version talks about this, saying, "Come to me from Lebanon, my promised spouse." In other words, it's like they are engaged. He wants to look forward to the time that they can be united as husband and wife. He wants her to come away with him. And let's go back to the mountains. Let's go back to a setting that's much more comfortable for us. "Thou hast ravished my heart, my sister, my spouse. Thou hast ravished my heart with one of thine eyes, with one chain of thy neck. How fair is thy love, my sister, my spouse. How much better is thy love than wine, and the smell of thine ointments than all spices." Here, she's thinking in her mind about things that she would maybe wish her beloved would say, or maybe she's remembering the ways in which he has made comments about her beauty and the meaningful things that he has said, using images that are down home country for her. Sights and sounds from the mountains and the hill country, the fragrances and other things that remind her of home. "Thy lips, O my spouse, drop as the honeycomb. Honey and milk are under thy tongue, and the smell of thy garments is like the smell of Lebanon." You are just perfect in every way. All that I see about you, all that I think about with you, are absolutely beautiful memories. We find here in chapter 4, and going down to verse 10, looking at it from the Common English Version, he says, "Come down with me from Lebanon, my bride," up in verse 6. "If only you would come down with me from Lebanon. Descend from the peak of Amana, and from the peaks of Shinar and Hermon, from the lions' dens, from the mountain layers of leopards. You have captured my heart, my sister, my bride. You have captured my heart with one glance from your eyes, with one strand of your necklace. How beautiful is your loving, my sister, my bride. Your loving is so much better than wine, and your fragrance better than any perfume. Sweetness drops from your lips, my bride. Honey and milk are under your tongue, and the fragrance of your garments is like the fragrance of Lebanon. An enclosed garden is my sister, my bride, an enclosed pool, a sealed spring. Your limbs are an orchard of pomegranates with all kinds of luscious fruits, henna and spices and nard and saffron, sweet cane and cinnamon, with all scented wood, myrrh and aloes, with very choicest perfumes. You are a garden spring, a well of fresh water, streams from Lebanon." So while we find here the comments that are being made in her mind, she is seeing all kinds of sweetness that could be said by her wonderful beloved. Those are the memories she has of the things that maybe he has said, or in those indirect communications that he has conveyed with his eyes and with his actions. And so indeed she is hearing Solomon's voice in the first person with the things that he has to say. But in her mind, she is rehearsing all of the things that her beloved has said or implied. And the strength of the bond that exists between them is so much deeper and so much stronger than these flattering words that are coming from the king. So in verse 16, she says, "Awake, O north wind, and come, thou south. Blow upon my garden, that the spices thereof may flow out. Let my beloved come into his garden and eat his pleasant fruits. She's looking for an escape. She's hoping that somehow her beloved can come get her. In some way they can be reunited. In some way they could have back that special relationship that has been temporarily disrupted here by the overtures of the king. And in chapter 5, the first part of verse 1, the shepherd boy says, I am come into my garden, my sister, my spouse. I have gathered my myrrh with my spice. I have eaten my honeycomb with honey. I have drunk my wine with my milk. So here we find that the shepherd boy is saying, I've not forgotten about you. I'm remembering all those perfect moments that we had. All of that is perfectly entrenched in my memory. All of those times that we've had, and I am very hopeful that we will be able to have those times again. And it is at this point that we begin to see the chorus in this poetic drama beginning to side with the Shulamite, hoping that she can have such a wonderful relationship again. They begin to pick up on the overtures of love that are being felt by this girl. As the chorus says, O friends, drink, yea, drink abundantly, O my beloved. The chorus seems to be rooting for the victory and the reunion of the Shulamite and the shepherd boy, that they're going to be able to resume that relationship and that truly great love will prevail. And so that brings us to the end of what I would call scene 1 in this third part of this drama, as now Solomon has had a second attempt at trying to woo this maiden, but it has not really scored big points with her. She is instead thinking about her shepherd boy, wonderful times with him, and still longing ever more forcefully to have the chance to be reunited with him. So in the next scene that unfolds is the Shulamite woman now is having another dream as she continues to think about her beloved and what might happen if they could be together. In chapter 5, beginning now in verse 2, it says, I sleep, but my heart awaketh. It is the voice of my beloved that knocketh, saying, Open to me, my sister, my love, my dove, my undefiled. For my head is filled with dew, and my locks with the drops of the night. I have put off my coat. How shall I put it on? I've washed my feet. How shall I defile them? My beloved put his hand in the hole of the door of my bowels that were moved for him. I rose up to open to my beloved, and my hands dropped with myrrh, and my fingers with sweet-smelling myrrh upon the handles of the lock. In looking here at chapter 5 and looking at the comments made by the Shulamite woman, looking at it from a different translation, we find beginning in verse 2, I was sleeping, but my heart was awake. A sound. My love is knocking. And here's what she believes she hears him saying. Open for me, my sister, my dearest, my dove, my perfect one. My head is soaked with dew, my hair with the night mists. And so the woman says, I've taken off my tunic. Why should I put it on again? I've bathed my feet. Why should I get them dirty? My love put his hand in through the latch hole, and my body ached for him. I arose. I went to open for my love. My hands dripped myrrh, and my fingers liquid myrrh over the handles of the lock. I went and opened for my love, but my love had turned and gone away. I nearly died when he turned away. I looked for him, but couldn't find him. I called out for him, but he didn't answer me. They found me, the guards who make their rounds in the city. They struck me and bruised me. They took my shawl away from me, those guards of the city walls. I place you under oath, daughters of Jerusalem, that you find my love. What should I tell you? That I am weak with love. So what we find happening here in this dream is that she dreams of her beloved coming. And she is already laying down to rest, but she hears him, and she's a little groggy. She thinks twice about getting up and opening the door, but then when she realizes who it is, she opens to her beloved. But when she opened the door, by the time she got it open in her dream, he was gone. And so she went searching for him. And so she went looking all over the city, trying to find him. And in her dream, she had a bad experience when she run afoul of the watchmen of the city. They didn't recognize her. They didn't know why she was out in the night. And so she was somewhat mistreated by them, because to her, the city is a scary place. And to her, bad things can happen whenever you are in the city, and you can fall into difficult circumstances. And so all of this is a dream that would have made her very restless, to be sure. But we find here, in looking at what she has to say here in her dream as she thinks about this wonderful time with her man, we find that the chorus of ladies responds in verse 9 and says, "What is thy beloved more than another beloved, O thou fairest among women? What is thy beloved more than another beloved, that thou dost so charge us?" In other words, she has told the daughters of Jerusalem, if you see my beloved, tell him I am just filled with love for him. I am sick with love in his behalf. The chorus answers back and says, wait a minute. He's just a guy. The king is the one who really, wants your affection. Why are you holding on to this relationship with the shepherd boy? He's just another lover. A lover is a lover. It's not that big a deal. Forget him. Now look at your new life, the new opportunities. Once again, they are sort of echoing the sentiments of King Solomon and what many of the common people would have also felt. For to them, if Solomon had so favored them and invited them to become a spouse, they would have jumped at the chance. So why is this woman not cooperating and falling for the king like other wives obviously had? And instead, she's continuing to have these bad dreams in terms of bad things happening. She's longing to be with somebody else. And so it is just really a hard situation for them to be able to understand. But she gives an answer, continuing in verse 10. My beloved is white and ruddy, the chiefest among 10,000. His head is as the most fine gold. His locks are bushy and black as a raven. His eyes are as the eyes of doves by the rivers of waters, washed with milk and fitly set. His cheeks are as a bed of spices, as sweet flowers. His lips like lilies, dropping sweet-smelling myrrh. His hands are as golden rings set with beryl. His belly is as bright ivory overlaid with sapphires. His legs are as pillars of marble set upon sockets of fine gold. His countenance is as Lebanon, excellent as the cedars. His mouth is most sweet. Yea, he is altogether lovely. This is my beloved, and this is my friend, O daughters of Jerusalem. He's my guy. In every way. He is handsome, he is beautiful, and she goes through quite a description here of him. And we notice in chapter 6 and verse 1 that the ladies of Jerusalem kind of respond with a wow. It says, whither is thy beloved gone, O thou fairest among women? Whither is thy beloved turned aside, that we may seek after him with thee? He would definitely be a sight to see from the way in which you have described him. And she goes on to say, he's right here in my heart, in verses 2 and 3 of the 6th chapter. My beloved is gone down into his garden, in the beds of spices, to feed in the gardens and to gather lilies. I am my beloved's, and my beloved is mine, and he feedeth among the lilies. He's right here in my heart. He's here in my memories. He's here in my mind, and he is the one that indeed I love. So that takes us there to the end of the second scene of what we would call of this part of the drama. Let's look at the questions on page 8 in our handout. It says the setting changes from the countryside of Issachar to where? Well, they've moved from the countryside, and as we noticed with the descriptions given, they've now moved to the palace at Jerusalem. And in chapter 3, it says describe the procession. Well, they saw Solomon with the Shulamite woman beside him in his chariot. And they talked about all of the beauty of that chariot and how gorgeous it was, how beautiful the woman was that was beside him, and the marching of the soldiers, his bodyguard, as they were in the procession. They also talked about his fancy bed and the other accessories that accompanied him, much like you would be describing the floats in a parade. So all of that is given to us to help us understand his welcoming and reception back in Jerusalem, and that he came in with power and pomp and circumstance and the adoration of everybody. And here again, this is another contributing factor as he tries to win the affection of this Shulamite maiden. It says in question 3, how does Solomon try to win the affection of the Shulamite once they are back in the palace? Well, we read once again of another conversation. He flirted with her again. He talked about her beauty, how perfect she was in every way. And so he's saying all of the things that a woman would normally want to hear. And he is showing that he notices that she is special. He wants time with her, and she would be the perfect match for him in every way because he sees her as the personification of perfection. But instead of her responding to that and saying, "Oh, isn't that sweet, and I love you too," instead, she smiles and graciously accepts his compliments, but her mind is elsewhere, and she continues to dream and to focus upon the coming of her beloved and of the chance she's going to have to maybe one day be reunited with him very soon. She dreams of the things that he would say. She visualizes his beauty and why he was so appealing to her. And so, rather than give any place to the flattery and to the efforts of Solomon to turn her head, she keeps her attention focused solely upon her love. What an important lesson that is for us to learn. There may be folks who come around us from either sex trying to woo our affections and possibly persuade us to break the marriage bond that we have, to help us focus on our problems, to help us see how life could be so much better if we would turn and follow them. They offer flattery. They offer us maybe the idea of the grass being greener on the other side, that I can give you riches, I can give you houses, I can make life so much better for you if you would just forget about the other commitment, the other love that you have, and turn to me. And notice how we see the Shulamite combating that. Throughout all of these tests, whether it be comments from the daughters of Jerusalem, or whether it be the flattery from King Solomon, she doesn't allow that to turn her head, to seep into her thoughts, and to make her start dreaming new daydreams of what life could be like with the king. She's not interested. She's satisfied with the love she has with her shepherd boy. There is not going to be any inkling given that she's going to turn her affection to the king, reject that love, and go chasing after somebody else. That is the strength of the bonds of love. We think about that which is pure and holy. We think about that which is right. We think about the wonderful times and promises. We think about the strong ties and bonds that we have with our beloved. And that love grows and strengthens. Whether we're talking about the love that we have for Christ, or whether we're talking about the love that we have within the family with our spouse, love is a very powerful force. That's why Paul talked about it so intently when he wrote to the Corinthians and talked about the characteristics of love. That love doesn't listen to all that idle chatter, doesn't let you have someone tell you how hard you have it. You believe that which is good. You strengthen that relationship. You nurture that love. And love, he says, is a more excellent way even than the wow factor that could be seen with signs and wonders and miracles. Love is satisfying. Love runs deep. Love is a bond that cannot be broken when it is true love in practice. And that's part of the lessons of what we are learning here as we go through Solomon's instruction in this very famous and moving work, the Song of Solomon. We appreciate you joining us today and hope that you'll join us again next week. I'm Dale Robbins from the Eubank Church of Christ, and we hope to see you soon and hope that you'll join us again next Wednesday as we continue our study in this fascinating book.